Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Coffee and Code. My name's Peter Fisher, the host of the How to Code Well YouTube channel. Today I'm going to install WordPress using Docker and using Composer. This has basically come out of sheer frustration because I've done, as a PHP developer and a freelancer, I've created several WordPress sites myself. I've certainly got some that I actually own, and every time I do it, every time I build a WordPress site, I seem to spend so long in actually installing the damn thing and getting it all configured and everything. So I thought, why not just create a very simple way of installing WordPress just through the simple commands. And there's things that we can use, tools that we can use, Composer as a way of installing dependencies, and Docker as a means of actually building the infrastructure for the WordPress site to live on. So I mean, in terms of the Docker side, it's quite simple because it's just MySQL and a web server, so Apache or Nginx or what have you, and then Composer you can use to actually install the WordPress application, and there you go. I mean, really, if you think about it like that, it should only be a couple of commands to actually get a installation of WordPress running, which is a Composer install based off of your composer.log file, and a Docker compose up -d to actually get the Docker bits and pieces running. And yesterday I was actually working on a WordPress blog. One of my clients said, look, tasked me to build or take an existing WordPress site and make it, in their words, usable, because the previous person who obviously developed the WordPress site just installed so many plugins and themes which either weren't used, not supported anymore, and they usually did similar things, just slightly differently. And so there was 101 ways to actually update this WordPress blog, and it was extremely simple. Oops, sorry, that's my watch vibrating. It was extremely simple as a website, an extremely simple website. And so I was left thinking, you know, at the end of the day, I ended up just creating it from scratch. But I went through the same period that I go through every time of setting up like a lamp stack, if you will. And so I just got really frustrated thinking about, you know, having to do this again. So in late last night, after last night's stream, in fact, I thought, why don't I just create a simple install-WordPress repository on my GitHub repo, which has all the bits and pieces I need, and then when another client comes along or whatever to ask for a WordPress to be built, then all I need to do is fork that repository, run those simple commands, compose and Docker compose, and there you go. I've got something to start with. I mean, yesterday I was kind of like treading through treacle in order to get the damn thing actually installed and in a usable state. Even before, you know, so an hour or so was consumed just sort of trying to get that working before I actually had something that I could actually, you know, play with. So what I'm going to do is create a very, very simple installation process through Docker and Compose to build up a WordPress blog. And what I'm thinking of doing is every time WordPress release a new version is to tag the repository with the version of WordPress. That way, then we've got something to continue working on whenever they update, I update, and so forth. So as usual, I am not prepared. The only preparation I've done is I've written a couple of notes down just to remind me that certain things need to be done in a certain way, as well as I've created. If I go to the browser here, I've just created the WordPress install repository, which I've literally just cloned. So that is all I've done. That is all I have done. You'll have to forgive me. I'm still suffering from this stupid bout of man flu. So I might have to just cough and all of that. But also something I should say is that if you see me running out of this live stream, it's because I have a very important Amazon delivery today. And of course, Amazon have they've done their usual thing of saying, yes, we'll deliver it to you, Amazon Prime, we'll deliver it to you today, anywhere between the morning and 9 p.m., which, let's just roll the dice on that one. So it was probably, knowing my luck, going to happen halfway through this. So if I do jump out, it will be because I'm answering the door, picking up a package. But anyway, hopefully that won't happen. If I speed up, then maybe I'll be able to do this in time. So we're going to go to the to PHP Storm here, and like I said, I've literally just checked this out. Excuse me. Just grab a bit of coffee. What I'm going to do, the first thing I do is create a very simple git ignore file. Bear with me a minute. I don't actually think you can see this coming out on PHP Storm. Okay, so I'm going to just choose WordPress as an example. Actually, no, I'm just going to generate a blank one. That'll do. All right, so I've just generated a blank git ignore file, and the first thing I'm going to ignore is just idea. And yeah, that's fine, because with PHP Storm, you usually get sort of all the project stuff is usually in idea. I think that's a JetBrains thing. Okay, so then I'm just going to, oh, forgive me, that's my watch reminding me that I'm not actually moving. So the next thing I'm going to do is just commit this. Again, I don't think you can see any of this in the actual live stream. And I'm just going to simply commit, so adding ignore file. If you hear that rumbling, it's because my very persuasive watch is telling me that I haven't moved in a while. So I'm just going to commit and push that up. So that's the first thing. So now if we go into the browser again, which I'm just going to switch to here, let's refresh this page, and we should now have, yay, our little git ignore file. So that's cool. So I'm actually going to do this work in another branch. So I'm going to just switch to a branch. I'm going to create a new one, and I'm going to call it develop. The reason being is that I would like master to be whatever is the current version, and I want to have sorry, I need to change that back. I want to have master being the current version of WordPress, and then I want obviously that tagged to the different versions, but I want to be working on another branch, so develop is what I'm going to be working in. Excuse me. So I've switched that now to the develop branch, and what I'm going to simply do is just create a README file, because there's a lot of things that I say it's a simple thing. I say that this is a simple procedure to do, but there's actually it's quite involved, in the sense that there's things that I need to do and set and stuff. So I'm just going to do a simple README, and that's just going to be whoops .md. Excuse me. Yes, I would like to put it into Git. Okay, so we have a simple README file. And here we're just going to create a things to do list, if you will. So I'm just going to do, what's the title here? WordPress, WordPress. I never remember whether WordPress is one word or two words. Let's just leave it like that. WordPress install, using, I don't know, Docker and Composer. Wonderful. So we're going to have another section called install, like that, and then we're going to have another section, and we're probably going to call it uninstall as well. And up here we can have like a sort of a terms. What am I talking about? A table of contents. So install and then uninstall. Uninstall. Oh God. Spelling, Pete. Spell the damn thing. Right. So we're also going to have another one in here. We're going to call that. We're also going to have install. Above that, we're going to have another one, and we're just going to have requirements. Requirements. Like that. Obviously not spelt wrong. Okay, so. And then another heading. So this is probably pretty boring, right? Because what I'm doing here is I'm just writing. I'm not actually coding. But what I'm trying to do is get the stuff that's in my head in a sort of a logical meaning on paper, on code, on in a README file. So with install, we obviously have another one, and we're going to call this Docker machine, and that is going to be optional because you don't need to have a Docker machine to do this. The next one is going to be Composer. And the requirements are going to be a list of requirements. So we have Docker machine, which is optional. And we have, this will all make sense in a minute. Believe me. Docker machine, we also need to have, obviously, Docker. And we obviously need to have Docker compose. We also compose, and we also need to have Composer, obviously, for this to work. So that's the requirements that we need. That's great. And so with the install process, we've got Docker machine, Composer, and then we have we're gonna after that. We're gonna do Docker compose. Sweet. And then in the install process, we're going to have another one. We're going to call this remove containers. 1, 2, 3. Remove images, and then remove Docker machine. And we'll probably put that at the top, because if you remove the machine, you remove all of those. And again, this is going to be flagged as optional because you don't need to have Docker machine. Okay, so I've kind of set this out. This is kind of my playbook, if you will. So the first thing we're going to do is spin up a Docker machine, which you don't need to do because you could just do this off the default Docker machine. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to install all the relevant bits and pieces through Composer, and then what we're going to do is write our Docker file, and then run that through Docker Compose, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we will have a web server, and then and a database with WordPress installed. And then what I like to do is have an uninstallation process, so how you can remove these things. So removing Docker machine, removing the containers, and removing the images, and so forth. This is just kind of like how I like to work. So the first thing then, let's just save that file. The first thing then, I'm just going to grab more coffee, because last time this went cold. Oh. Right. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is get a Docker machine running. So I'm just going to dive into the terminal, and you can see I've been playing around a little bit. So let's just clear this down. So I'm going to do a Docker -machine, and I'm just going to create a new one, and we're just going to call this WordPress. Well, I want to say WordPress. I tell you what, if there's going to be any bugs today, it's going to be because of my spelling. Let's run that. So that should create the WordPress install Docker machine. So I'm doing a talk next Wednesday, PHP Southwest, and the talk is going to be on how to put your Docker image, or how to put your Docker image on a diet. And I've got all of the talk kind of ready. I'm going to do a video on it probably tomorrow, and no, I won't publish it tomorrow. That's for the following week. But what I'm really fearful of, not the talk itself, is just coughing over everyone. It's just coughing over everyone. Gosh. So we're just going to wait for this to do its fancy thing. This is just creating a Docker machine with, I think, boot to Docker goes into there too. Cool. Okay, so now we can run this line here, which sets the environment variable. So I'm just going to clear down the screen so you can see what I'm doing. Cool. And then we can evaluate the environment variables to the current shell. Marvelous, which means now that we have access to this shell that I'm in now has access to the Docker machine WordPress install. And if I was to do Docker images, then we obviously, if I could spell it. Docker images, we obviously don't have any images here. And if we did Docker PS -a, just to get everything, we obviously don't have any containers. So that's cool. That's the first thing. So what I'm going to do is, let's just go up. Oh, come on. Up. There we go. That's what I want. I'm going to copy it from there. And I'm going to just, as I go, so this might take a little bit of time, and I do apologize, but it's just the way I work. What we're going to do is, so here we're going to do just a create and set the Docker machine to the current shell. So we're going to do 1, 2, 3. I like doing it in another line like this, and we're just going to put that in. Boom. Let's just bring that up to the top a little bit. There we go. That's cool. And then, so that's creating the machine. The next one we're going to do, if I go into the terminal again, so after that we did, what did we do? We did the env stuff, which is this stuff up here. Copy that and go back into the tutorial, and I do apologize, there will be a lot of toing and froing here. So that's the next thing we did. Save that, and then let's go into, whoa, magic mouse, easy tiger. Go into here, back into the U. The last thing we did was that one. So we're going to copy this, go back into here, paste that, and everybody's a winner. So that's the first thing. So we're going to save that. Woo! We're kind of a third way there. If everything was the same complexity, which it isn't. So I'm going to save that. I'm going to also just do a simple Git commit on this and push it up to the if I can. You are going to let me do a Git commit. Come on. It's not that difficult. Right, I'm just going to type in adding Docker machine commands, and we're just going to push that up. Commit and push. Yes, push. It's all going up to the develop branch. And if I go into the browser and have a little look at this, let's change that branch to be, well, let's refresh. Yeah, now we've got develop. Let's go into that branch. There we go. We have the installation process, and we have our little Docker machine commands here. So I guess with the, I suppose at this point, we can also do an uninstallation process as well. So let's just have a gander. We might as well do that too whilst we're here. So to remove the to remove the Docker machine, we simply do Docker. Whoopsie, No, we don't. Let's clear that down. Docker hyphen machine rm -f, and we're going to do, is it -f? I forget. Let's do a help. Help! Yeah, F, force. Let's clear that down. So Docker machine rm -f, and we're going to do its WordPress hyphen install. So there we go, done. So we can copy this line now into the tutorial and scroll all the way to the bottom here. So the uninstallation process. So this is this will remove the Docker machine, delete the delete any Docker images and containers. So boom, boom, boom. Paste that in. Save that. That's looking cool. Again, I'm going to do another commit of this thing. For uninstall. There we go. And we're just going to simply push that up. Yes, push. Okay, so now if we go back to, if I can find the right damn window. Yeah, here we go. Let's refresh this. And we now have the uninstallation process and the thing. Okay, woohoo! Okay, that's the first thing. Next thing is probably the more exciting thing. Is Composer. Is actually creating a composer file that will allow us to install WordPress. Right, coffee time. Yuck. So that's going cold. Okay, so with Docker, with Composer, what we can do is we can install plugins and we can install themes directly from Composer. Well, we're going to install the bare minimum. So what I want like this to be is just an extremely bare minimum WordPress installation. So what we need to do is create a new file, and we're just going to do composer.json, like so. Let me just take a look at something a moment. Yep, that's cool. Let's hit OK and hit yes. Okay, so we have our composer.json file. And in this, we're just going to open up some, this is in JSON, right? So we're just going to do this. So the name is going to be very basic. It's just going to be WordPress hyphen install, because that's the name of the thing. Description, surprise, surprise, it's going to be installing WordPress using Docker and Composer. And of course, it's an array or it's an object properties, so I need to put that in. Comma. And then, excuse me, then we need to have another line called repositories. Repositories, like so. And that is going to be an array. Boom, like that. And that array is going to have a type, because I suppose one thing I should say is that we will use, there is this fantastic, I should say, repository that we can use called wp-ist, wp-packagist. Is that the right word? Wp-packagist. I'll show you. I will show you. Wp-packagist. There we go. So this is the packagist for WordPress. It's fantastic. In fact, I could just copy this, to be honest. And it basically clones the WordPress plugins and themes repositories and puts them in, or mirrors them, I should say, and allows you to install stuff through Composer. So you can install all sorts of bits and pieces, themes and plugins and stuff that you can't just normally do that through WordPress. So this is very, very good. So do check that out. This is wpackagist.org. Hello, Shandu16. Is that? I hope I pronounced that right. I hope you're well. I hope you haven't got a cold like I do. But what I'll do is I'll just, for convenience, I'm just going to put that into the chat. So that's the thing I'm working on, or that's WP Packagist, and I suppose I should also put this into the chat too. So this is this is WordPress install. That is the link to the repository, or to the develop branch at least, that I'm working in. So if you fancy working with me, then that's no problem. Okay, so let's go back to what I was rabbiting on about. So let's go to here. We can remove that for now. Okay, so in type we put in type of Composer, like so, and then we also put in a URL, which is URL like this. And the URL is just HTTP. I've got to get this right. I think I'll just copy this from my notes, actually, just to make sure. There we go. Now, one thing I have just noticed is it's an array, but it's an object within that array. Obviously, of course it is. Okay, the next thing within this array is specifying the package, right? So we have another object, and in here we have package, or sorry, we don't have package, we have type of package, of course we do. Package. And in that, yeah, that's fine. And then we define the actual package, so package, because what we're going to do is we're going to download WordPress. And so the package is WordPress, so it has a name, which is obviously, no prizes for guessing, WordPress. And we're also going to have a type in this package, which is going to be the web root. And we're also going to have a version. So this defines, the version of this package. So this should be, this should be the version of WordPress that you're using, right? So in this case, we're just going to use the latest and greatest, which is not latest, not the bleeding edge, 4.8.2. Marvelous. Now we need to define the distribution. So we do that using dist, and we're going to use, I know that you can do this slightly differently. I think they've probably updated how you can do this, but this has worked for me. So dist is an object itself within package, and we're going to run a zip. And for this, we're going to do the URL, and I'm just going to check my notes a minute. Bear with me a minute, because I need to get this correct. I don't trust my spelling. So I'm just going to copy that and put that into here, like so. And obviously that's a string. So there we go. So that is the archive 4.8.2 of that of the zip file that we're going to download, which is called WordPress. And we're also going to be doing some other bits and pieces. So outside of the distribution thing here, we're going to have another, excuse me, called require, and that is going to require something when this package gets downloaded, and we're going to require another package, and we're going to require webroot installer. So I'm just going to copy that from my notes because I will get that wrong otherwise, and that is yeah, so that's the package and that's the version. Yeah, that looks good. Okie dokie. So that is, let me just recap. So we're defining a repositories section here. And the repository section, we give a type and a URL. So the URL is where the repository is, and the type, which is composer. The next thing we are going to define another package, a type of package, and that package has obviously the name of webroot of WordPress. Sorry, its type is webroot. It's got a version as well as a distribution, and that distribution is coming from a zip file. But that repository itself requires Fancy Guy webroot installer. Like I said, there might be different ways of doing this, but this has certainly worked for me in the past. After the array of repositories, we can now define our requirements for our stuff. So we just do require, and I do appreciate. I've just thought I've never done anything to do with Composer on the How to Code Well channel. So I probably should be going through each one of these a little bit more in depth, but because just of the sheer scale of this challenge of actually getting WordPress working, I think I'm just going to skip over some of the finite theory-based stuff. So here we're just going to do some requirements, and we're going to set this to PHP because we're going to require anything greater than or equal to 7.0.0 for our PHP, and we're also going to require WordPress. And what I'm going to do is just from my notes here, I'm just going to grab that because I know I'm going to get this wrong. So that's WordPress, and we're also going to require Fancy Guy as well, and we're also going to require a theme. And that theme is going to be 2017, like this. And what else? I think we'll leave it like that. Because I don't want this to be anything else than just a minimum installation. So if you want AskMet, then or however it's pronounced, then that will need to be installed separately. But we can. So we'll just leave it like that for now. The next thing we're going to do is define an extra section. Not Wrigley's extra, just an extra session. And here we're defining the actual web root itself, and this is going to be the WP directory. So we're not actually going to go into slash then WP admin. We're actually doing /WP/WP admin. So we're actually moving where WordPress is being installed, and we're putting that into, so that denotes the webroot package, which is WordPress, which is what we've defined here. All right, so let's save that, and what I'm going to do is run this and see if it fails. What's the betting it's going to blow up, right? What's the betting it's going to complain? Let's go into the terminal again, which is here. Let me just clear this down for some room. Let's do an ls to make sure that we've got it. So now we can do a composer, and I'm just going to do a simple install. And then sort of hope that this is going to work. Couldn't be resolved. This package requires PHP. It's because I'm not doing this within the Docker machine am I? This package requires 7.0.0, but your PHP version does not satisfy the requirements. So if I did PHP -v, what have I got on here? 7.1.1. Let's just use that. Let's just use that instead. So let's go to tutorial 7.1.1. Save. Go back into here. Hopefully this will now settle down. There we go. So we're installing all the bits and pieces now. 7.1.1 is a little bit heavy-handed, so I might change that down. I mean, you can use this with less, with a smaller version of PHP. But for now, it's worked. I'm happy with that. Let's just do an ls now and see what we've got. So, yay, we've got some bits and pieces. I'm just going to clear that down, make some room, do an ls again, so you can see. And in fact, what I should do is go back into, because you can see this easier from the actual tutorial window. So what we've done through that composer.json file is we've obviously generated our composer.lock file, because that just happens. Basically, that just locks down the versions that we've got. But we've also got this vendor folder now. The vendor folder has bits and pieces that are required, like Composer and this fancy guy thing. But we've also got the WP folder, which is where WordPress is installed. And we've also got a WP contents folder with the 2017 theme. Now, the 2017 theme was defined here in the WP packages-theme. All of these are exactly the same as the plugins and themes that you would normally get from WordPress. Like I said, this is literally a mirror. But this composer file is intelligent enough to know that this is a theme because it's -theme, and therefore goes in the themes directory. If I had a plugin, and I should probably do that just as an example, we would have a plugins directory. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that just as an example. Let's add in a plugin, and I'm just going to add in this one. Just to show you, just to prove that this works. So let's save that and go into, I've lost all my windows. Where did they all go? Terminal, go into the terminal, and then let's just do a composer, go up. Let's just do a composer update. And now that's adding that. So that's adding a plugin. So can you see that's wpackages plugin? And if we went into the tutorial here, we can see that we've actually now got a plugins directory, and the plugins have that plugin that we've just created. Fantastic. I think what I'll do is I'll probably, I want to do this without having any plugins, to be honest. So I'll leave that in for now, but then I think what I'll do as a tidy up is I'll remove the plugin and then make sure it works. Okay, so now we need to go back to the markdown, the README file here, and actually add some bits and pieces. I'm just going to drag this over here so we can actually see what it is that I'm doing. So what we did is we did a composer install. So we shouldn't be doing an update, because an update will update everything, and install will install it through the composer.lock file, which we've got, and we will commit. Excuse me. So I'm just going to go up to find that, grab this in here, and then type install all the required packages. Blech. So 1, 2, 3. Oops. Paste that in. Install the required packages. Okay, so scroll down just to see if I can see this on the browser. There we go. Install the required packages. So let's just save that. And again, let's just drag this out. I'm going to do a composer, do a git commit and push this. But before I do that, I want to ignore a couple of things because I don't actually want to commit anything that I've just downloaded. I mean, essentially, what we're doing here is we're just having a very simple installation process, and this installation process is going to change every time WordPress gets updated, every time that theme gets updated. And I don't want to do that. I want to just focus on using the composer.log file as a way of managing that. So in the ignore file, what we're going to ignore is we're going to obviously ignore everything in vendor, but we're also going to ignore WP, and we're going to ignore WP content hyphen themes and WP content hyphen plugins, because these shouldn't, in my opinion anyway, shouldn't be committed because they'll change when when they get updated, and so my repository will need to be constantly updating itself, and I don't want to get into that. I want to control all of these things through the composer.json file, and so if there's any changes to any of these things, then all I'm doing is changing numbers. That's all I'm doing. I'm not changing anything in these directories. These directories should be automatically generated, and like I said, I want to use this as a very easy way of installing WordPress, and then when it comes to a client asking for some WordPress work, all I need to do is fork this repository, run composer install, run the Docker Compose, which I'm going to be talking about in a minute, and then there you go. I suppose if I was to create a theme for a particular client, then what I can do is ignore, I suppose what I could do here is just ignore the 2017 one, but you know, let's just not worry about that at the moment. So I might change that in the future. Okay, so what I'm going to do, is I'm going to commit all of this stuff. So git, adding composer lock file, composer.lock. Come on, .lock. I spend most of my time writing git commits, and ignoring themes, plugins, and install and web root. Okay, so I'm going to just push this up now. Push. And if we go into the browser, hopefully, if I was to refresh this, we now have just, it is literally this simple. A composer.json file, composer.lock file, the readme, which is this obviously, as well as the git ignore. So we don't actually have any of the stuff that I've just installed, because those, like I said, those things that we've installed, they will be changing every time I change the composer.json file. So the JSON file is very simple. It's just this. It's 36 lines, and that is all you need to install the very basic, bare minimum installation of WordPress. So that's the composer file. Now we can work on, let's do a lock. Let's just see. The lock file is a little bit longer than that, isn't it? Obviously, because it's a lock file. That's 233. That's fine. So now we've done that, we can focus on the next part, which is the Docker Compose. Excuse me. Let's grab some more water. So I guess this is where the magic happens, right? I guess this is where the magic happens. We're actually needing to spin up some bits and pieces for this to actually work. So there's a number of things that we need to do. We obviously need to have a virtual host. I'm going to use Apache. I'm not going to use Nginx just because I use Apache more often. I'm more familiar with it. And we're going to use MySQL, obviously, for the other thing. So we need to have 2 Docker files for WordPress, for the web server and MySQL. That's going to be controlled by a Docker Compose file. So we can then use that to inject variables into there. I know that there's at least a few environment variables that we need for at least the MySQL side of things. But let's just get cracking. So the first thing we need to do is we need to actually build. I suppose the first thing we need to do is actually build these Docker files, and I'm just thinking something. Something I probably should have done is how we because there's going to be a Docker file for MySQL and a Docker file for, unless I can get away. So I'm just thinking out loud. Unless I can get away with it, because there's going to be a Docker file that we are going to write for Apache. So that's going to install all PHP bits and pieces. That's fine. But there is also going to be another Docker file for MySQL, but that would require changing the folder structure. That would require changing the folder structure, because what you would have is a MySQL directory with its config, and a Apache directory with its config, and then a sites directory with all of this in, which is probably what I should have done. So what you get is a directory called Apache, or web server or whatever, and then another one, and we call this MySQL. And then in Apache we have a Docker file like that, and then in MySQL we also have a Docker file like that, and in the root we have a Docker Compose file, Docker Compose .yaml, like this. But the problem here, with Apache you also need to have a config folder, to store your config, which is going to be our virtual host, so config, and anything else that we want to configure. Same with MySQL. We might want to have a config folder in there. I'm not going to put it in there yet, but we could have one for the database, maybe for having some schemas. But this site isn't going to do anything to MySQL. It's only going to be doing stuff to Apache. So in here we should have a directory called site. And in site we should have this stuff, apart from Docker Compose, apart from the README. That's what we should have done. That's what I'm going to do. I do apologize. What I'm going to do is just copy this. Let's just copy those 3 things and put it into here. Yep. So now in site we have git ignore composer.json and the composer lock file, which means that I'm going to just quickly do this in the terminal, just because I can and it's easier. So I need to do an rm -rv of composer, all the things, vendor, all the things, wp -content, and I think that's it. Let's remove all those things, do an ls, and there we go. So we've just got that. That looks pretty good. Let's just clear that down just so you can see it a little bit better, because I think this is off the screen. So let's do an ls. Wonderful. Okay, let's go back to the tutorial. So now it's a little tidier. So we have Docker Compose on the first level, then we have a README and the git ignore file. but we've separated these out. So we've got MySQL, which means that we can have the Docker file, which means that we can have some other schemas and all sorts in here. And then we have in Apache, we have also got some configuration as well as the site. Now the site is only going to consist of these three things. Yeah, so let's just copy that. I'm just going to, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this file and I'm going to use this file instead. So we have idea and then we have vendor, but that should actually be Apache, and I'm going to call it Apache 2, not Apache, just to remove confusion. So I need to refactor, rename, call that Apache 2. I could have just called it web server, but then, you know, what web server is it? So that's now Apache 2, and it's actually site, like that. And again, with this one, that needs to be changed to Apache 2 hyphen site hyphen WP, and same with these guys here. Okay. Okay, so there's also, I mean, I should say there's also going to be other, we need to have an index file, and we also need to have our WP config file as well. But I'll deal with that in a minute. Don't worry about that. I just want to get all this laid out. The config is going to have a folder in here called sites enabled, because we're going to have a virtual host in here that I will do in a mo. I just want to get these things spun up first. First thing I suppose I should do, because I have done an awful lot of change, is let's just go back into the terminal and build WordPress again in the right places. And what I would like to do is have all of these all the commands ran from the web root. So I don't want anyone to have to CD into Apache to then run into site to then run Composer. I want them all to be ran from here. So we need to change the Composer command to, and there's a way to do that, which I'll just show. So let's go back into the terminal here, and then do an ls. We're in the root. We can do Composer, and we're going to do an install, but we're going to do a hyphen D, because that defines the working directory, and the working directory is Apache 2 and then site, and in site we have the Composer file. So if we run that, hopefully we're going to install all the things which we've done, and hopefully, fingers crossed, if I've done this correctly, let's go back into here, sorry, and go into site. There we go. So that we've literally just moved the directory into site. So okay. So what I'm going to do is I won't commit these yet because I've got other bits and pieces that I want to do, the Docker files and so forth. So let's work on the Docker file for Apache, shall we? That's kind of the first thing we need to do. My iMac is making some very odd noises, so I hope this won't freeze up. Okay, so what we're going to do is define some very basic instructions, Docker file instructions. Bear with me a minute, just grab a drink. First one is from, and that's going to be Debian. We're going to use, if I spell that right, that would be great. We're just going to use stretch for this. And I should probably put in comment at the top. So this is web server for WordPress, and it's an Apache 2 web server for WordPress. Okay, so that's the first instruction. Fine, so we're doing that. I'm going to add a label, and that label is going to be a maintainer, and I'm just going to equal that to my name, Peter Fisher, all the things, and then what we're going to do, because what I would like to do. No, let's focus on what the actual packages that we're installing first. Let's deal with that rather than worry about environment variables. We'll do that in a minute. So we're going to do a run, which is a run instruction. apt-get update -y, because that's doing it with you're saying yes to everything on confirmation. And I'm going to just do an and to create a new line here. In fact, what I'm going to do is just do a new line here and then do an and here and put that down there because I think that looks better. apt-get install. What do we need? So -y. We obviously need Apache 2. And what else do we need? Let's do this on a new line too. What else do we need? We need Apache 2. Whoops. We need Apache 2. We need lib Apache 2 -mod -php. We also need PHP 7.0. Okay. That might not be compatible, but we'll see. We also need keeping this nice and small. So PHP. Maybe that's all we need. 7.0. Just for argument's sake, we're going to need MySQL, aren't we? We're going to need the connection to MySQL. And I think we also need to have XML, because that is used, I believe, for the sitemaps for WordPress. After that, we will probably need curl. Maybe not. Let's just add it in anyway. Okay. Next thing is we're going to do an and is that we're going to need. We're going to come on, stupid thing. We're going to need to enable mod rewrite. So we need to do A to enable. This is so weird, isn't it? I mean, I always forget this. A to en. So Apache to enable mod rewrite. Let's spell this right. And we're going to tidy up after ourselves. Now, this is part of what I'm going to talk about in my talk about tidying up after oneself. So here we're just going to do an apt-get auto remove, and we're doing that with -y. We're also going to remove any configuration as well. That's a new line. So I mean, this might look really long, but I actually think this makes it easier to read. So we're also going to do an and of rm -f -rf, because we're going to do it recursively and forcibly into var lib, come on, lib, apt, and then lists, and that is going to be like so with an asterisk, like that. Okay, so that's our run command. So that should run all the bits and pieces that we need for WordPress to be installed. Another thing we're going to do is another instruction we're going to do. Let's go back to here. Is we're going to copy the site into the web root, but I haven't actually defined the web root, so let's do that as an environment variable. So we're going to do env. My watch is telling me to move again. doc_root, and that is going to be our environment variable, which we're going to set to var wub, because that's where the site's going to be. We're going to call this, we're just simply going to call this WordPress -install. Okay. Before the copy statement, we're going to change our working directory. So workdir is going to be the doc root, like so, doc_root. And so because we've changed our working directory, we can literally just do that. So we're going to that. So we can copy the site, which is in here, this thing, into the working directory, which we've defined as this. Okay, is there anything else we need to do? Oh yeah, we obviously need to add the virtual host, which I haven't actually done yet, but we also need to do an expose of port 80, and we also need to do a CMD of Apache, is it CTL -D, and we're going to put this in the foreground for foreground like that. Wonderful. Okay, so like I said, we need to do we need to add some bits and pieces. So up here, some virtual host stuff. So we're going to do add, and we're going to do, it's going to be in config, and I've called it, what did I call it in here? Config sites enabled. Sites. In fact, it doesn't need to be sites enabled. It could just be sites available, because the default one is already enabled. That makes a bit more sense, doesn't it? So let's do available. AV. Whoops. There we go. Available, and it's going to be the default one is 000-default .conf. So we're gonna add that of sites available to there, or we're going to add that file, which I'm yet to create in the sites enabled folder, which needs to be renamed, obviously. Let's see if I can do that now. Refactor, rename, change that to you. Cool. So there's going to be a file in there called 000-default-default.conf, which is our virtual host. And we're going to copy that into -etc. Where is it? Apache 2. So this is now on. We're now adding this file to the image. So that is sites available hash. Not hash. Not / I meant 000-default.conf. And another line. Okay, so fairly straightforward, right? Fairly straightforward. Debian stretch is where we're going, what we're downloading our base image, setting a label. That's fine. We don't need to do that, but I just like to set the maintainer. The document root is going to be WordPress install. We don't this hasn't actually been created yet, but it will be created when we copy it to the site root. We're then going to install a bunch of stuff. I'm just going to go through this to make sure everything is spelt correctly. So apt-get update -y. That's cool. New line. Install Apache 2. All the things that and that. That looks good to me. And then another line. We're going to enable rewrite, which is an Apache module. And then we're going to clean up after ourselves using an auto remove. Yep. We're going to do that with yes and purging all the config files. Then finally, we're going to remove everything from that folder, which is fine. So this is the package cache. And we're doing that in one single run instruction, which is great. And then after that, we're copying this file that I'm yet to create in here, which is our virtual host, into there. We're setting the working directory to the document root, which is this thing up here, which is fine. And then we're copying the whole site into that directory because we've changed our working directory. We're exposing port 80, and then we're running the Apache in the foreground. I think, touch wood, that is all we need, hopefully. So what I'm going to do is create this file in here. So new file. We're going to create our virtual host file. So let's just take a look at that, shall we? Bear with me, I'm just going to grab a drink. Okay. So the virtual host, I'm going to do virtual host. I'm going to run it off of port 80. Like that. Let's close virtual host. Like so. And then in virtual host, I'm going to designate some rules. So the first one is going to be the server name. Whoops, server name. And that is going to be just set to Wordpress -install. We're also going to define the server admin, which is just going to be yeah, let's not do that. I'm not going to give my email address away that easily. And then what we can do is set the document root, which is document root. And because we've defined the document root as a environment variable that we've baked into the Docker image, we can now do doc_root, get that variable out. Excellent. So now we can define some directories. So we can do directory, and let's close that off too. I'm not sure if this is needed, but let's just try it anyway. This directory is going to be the document root, like that. And we're going to do options, indexes, follow sym links. I don't think we need to do that, but let's just do it anyway, just in case. Multi-views. I mean, what I can do is just test this out later on by removing some of these things. Multi-views. And also, we're going to allow override all, and we're going to do it as an order, which is allow and then deny. Again, I think we can tighten this up considerably more, but and then allow from all. So again, I think we can tighten this up quite a lot, but let's just keep it as open as we can for now, and then I can change all of this as we go along. After that, I'm going to set the error log, so error log, and that's just going to be, whoops, there is a variable that we can use, which is Apache _log_dir, and that's just going to go into error.log. We're also going to set a custom log as well. And that's going to be, again, the Apache log dir, and that is going to be access log. Whoops, access.log, and we're going to set that as combined, like so. And let's just bring that in, just to tidy that up a little bit. Okay, so we're going to save that. That looks okay to me. Let's just make that a little bit more presentable. Hopefully I haven't spelt anything wrong in there, but we'll see. So that should now, with this Docker file, that will add that file 00 default into the sites available folder on the image, and copying the site into there too. So that should be all copied in. And maybe we'll look at the Docker ignore files when we get to it. So that's cool. What I'm going to do is just spin this up just through a normal Docker build and then a Docker run, just to ensure that this is working before I jump onto the MySQL thing. I do appreciate this is probably the most weighty part of this tutorial is the Docker bit. But once it's done, it is done. So let's go into the terminal again. Let's clear that down. Let's do an ls, and I'm just for this example, I'm just going to cd into Apache 2, and then just do a Docker build, just to make sure that this works. This isn't good. Could not read certificates. Oh dear. Bear with me a minute. I've got a problem with Docker. Yay, Docker images. Yeah, there's a problem with. That's weird. It's like my machine has just. Oh, I know. I've removed my Docker machine, haven't I? Ugh, moron. Docker machine ls. Yeah, if I did have a look at. Yeah, all of that is gone. What a fool. Let's clear that down. What I need to do is go back into the browser, go back to my notes, and install the damn thing. So we're going to run that to create the Docker machine. Oh dear. Well, my Amazon package hasn't arrived, or at least I haven't heard it arrive. So hopefully it'll arrive when I finish this stream. Hopefully, I really don't want to dive out of this. So that's creating the machine, installing boot to Docker and all that stuff, and hopefully this will just work. Please, come on, give me my terminal back. Waiting for an IP. I hate it when that happens, and it's like just stalling, and you don't know whether it's going to fail or succeed. But it looks like it's working. It's provisioning that. Of course, I'm live streaming, so everything's running slow. And then what we can do is run that command. So I'm going to clear this down, make some room, run that, and then run this. So these are the commands that I've got already in the installation process. Yay! So now if I did Docker images, marvelous. We now have our machine. Let's clear that down. We are in the Apache 2 working directory, so I can now do Docker build, and I'm going to give it a tag of just temp for now, temp web server for now. And this is the current build context. So off it goes, downloading stretch, and all of this. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we won't get an error. But based on my spelling, we probably will. So it's installing all the things, all of that. That's all cool. Blah, 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 blah. Scrolling down like the Matrix. Woo! Whilst this is going, I'm going to have a sip. So the other day, I need to set that to be non-interactive. Anyway, the other day we bought some syrups for our coffee, and we bought like a selection box, if you will, of syrups. The only syrup that the two syrups that we've been using are chocolate and gingerbread. We like the gingerbread little samples so much we ended up buying one of those big syrup things, sugar-free, because we wanted to be good, with a pump. How awesome is that? So I'm just spreading everything now with with gingerbread syrup. That's so yeah. We've got so much of it. We're probably gonna get sick of it, and then go on to something else. But anyway, side note. Right. So that's created. That's cool. So if I clear the screen down and then do docker docker ps, not ps, docker images, we should have an image. And obviously the base image, temp web server, that's cool. So now if I did docker run, let's just run this bad boy up with a name of, let's just do a test. So imaginative. And we're going to do -d because we're going to do it in the background, and -p. Yeah, we will put it in the background for now. We're going to publish port 80 to port 80. And so that's cool. We obviously need the name of the image that we're going to run. So that's temp-web server. And there we go. So hopefully now we did docker ps. I'm going to do -a because I'm not confident. We do. Yes, we do. No, we don't. No, it exited 7 seconds ago. I knew this wasn't going to work. So anyway, to check the logs, we can do docker logs, and then I think I called it test. So we have action -d foreground failed. Oh, so syntax error of line 8 on line 8. So there's something wrong with my spelling there. Yeah, perhaps misspelled. So they can tell how many times I've tried this. Or defined by a module not included. Allow override. Right, let me just take a gander at that. Line 8. So there. Have I not spelt that right? No, I haven't spelt that. Oh, what an idiot. Yeah, so I'm missing an R. Sorry, I should really go back to this. I'm missing a bloody R. Save that, and then unfortunately I'm going to have to build all that again. But that's fine. I mean, that's what Docker's for, isn't it? Just keep building itself. So I'm going to do a Docker rm, might as well do -f, although I don't think it matters, to just remove that container, and then I'm going to just do a reverse search because I'm lazy, to build the whole thing again, which is cool. Clear that down, do a Docker reverse search again. I think I called it test. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Run, there we go. And then do a Docker ps -a. It's up. Woo! It's up. It's up. It's up. It's up. So now I can do Docker exec -it, and I called it test, and we're going to go in as bash. Okay, so because I changed the working directory, we're now in the installation folder, or the WordPress folder. If I did ls, we now have all the bits and pieces that we've created through Composer, which is fantastic and excellent. And if we also did echo, and we echoed out the document root, doc_root, because this is the environment variable that we baked, we also get that too. That's fantastic. That was better than I thought. I thought I was going to have to go back and forth quite a lot to get that to work, which is great. So that's a way forward. Okay, so that is the web server. I suppose what I can do, let's just exit this container. If I did docker -machine IP of WordPress -install to just get the IP of that. Okay, so that's this. I don't obviously have any other machines running, which is cool. We should be able to go to the browser, and the browser, which I will just show you, has come up with this. So there's a problem with well, it's not, well, it is a problem, but I'll tell you why. I'll tell you why we've got to this directory. It's because we don't have an index page, and we don't have our WP config set up, which is the next thing that I'm going to do. At least I hope that's why. So back into here. In WP content, in WP, we have, move that out a little bit, we have config sample. So we need to copy config sample, and we also need to copy index as well. And we need to copy those into the document root here. So the first thing I'm going to do is just copy the index page into site. And this is stuff that I will need to include it with the in Git in the branch. And also, so there's that, and we also need the config. And we're going to need to play around with the config as well, and the index page a little bit, because obviously we've changed the directory structure. This isn't the normal directory structure for WordPress at all. So there are some things that I just need to do, and it's probably going to be a little trial and error, so please bear with me. Yeah, whatever. No. That should have been changed. Why did you not change that to, come on. Oh, this is why I prefer doing things in the command line, because it's just easier. Refactor. No, that's not. Right, yeah. I'm going to do this in the damn terminal because it is so much easier. Renaming stuff. Go into site. Sorry, I'll put that back on here just to show you what I'm doing. We're going to just mv wp config sample to and that's not, sorry, mv, not mb, mv wp config sample to wp config.php. What PHP Storm wanted to do is remove and alter all the references of that file, and I didn't, because the file name would change, and I didn't want that to happen. So anyway, where was I? WP config and index. Okay, so I guess, oh, and we also need a htaccess file as well. So the WP config I'll play with first. We've got all the bits and pieces here for like the defining the user and the database and stuff, so we're slowly moving into the database world. We've also got some bits and pieces for the access keys and stuff. What I'm going to do, excuse me, what I'm going to do is using Docker Compose, we can inject variables, environment variables in. And so I'm going to use Docker Compose as a way of injecting what I'm going to term as the env mode, so the mode that that we're in, so whether it's development or test or production. So what I'm going to do is hack this up a little bit. So let's just do env is equal to, and there's a funky command that we can use in PHP Storm or in PHP, which is get env, a funky little function. And we're going to call this env underscore mode, like so. And that mode will be the switch, if you will, of what it is that you are using. But obviously these environment variables are well, they can be set by default in the Docker file, which is probably what I should do right up here. But I don't want to enforce it. So maybe I won't do that. So what I can do is just do if empty env like that. Then we're going to set env to dev. All right, dev. Now, stop it. There we go. So now I can do a switch statement. And in here, we're going to pass in env, and we can have a series of cases, right? So the first case is going to be production. And then that's going to break out of that case. And then in the next case, we're going to have test. And we're going to break out of that. And the next case we're going to have is dev. Well, that could be the default case, couldn't it? So the default case here, whoops, is, and then break out that. Break. Okay. So the default is going to be obviously dev, and then test, and then production. Wonderful. Let's just bring these back a little bit, make some room. So we can now define some bits and pieces. So we're going to do db name, db user. We're also going to have db password. Now, again, these can be passed in through environment variables if you would like, but just for sheer convenience, I'm not going to. So we also need a db host. And we're also going to set debug as well, a debug level. When it's in production, we're going to set that to false. Okay, so that's sort of set up for production. I obviously need to fill in the blanks and stuff. But with test, we have a similar thing, and also with default, we have a similar thing. I'm just going to put in a note here. This reverts. This is dev, just to, you know. So with debug, we're going to set that to true, and same with that one too. Now we're going to set some passwords and some other bits and pieces. So the host on here is going to be MySQL, because that's the container that we're linking to, or we will be linking to. The password, we're just going to have test for now. I will obviously change this and root for the user. The database name, we're just going to do wp install, which will obviously need to be changed and altered when this gets forked, but we'll worry about that closer to the time. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is scroll down here a little bit. So where we've got all of this stuff, we can now set these based on these things. So the database user, db user, is like that. The password is like this. The host isn't your local host because it's another container, so that's that. And then if we scroll down a little bit further, we have all the we don't need to worry about any of this at the moment. That's fine. We also can set some keys. So I guess what I can do is just randomly put some bits and pieces in here, but it doesn't need to, because this is only install. So we can do please change. And again, these would be different for different environments, but I'm not going to go that far in depth today, at least. Okay, so the table prefix is fine. This thing here, WP debug, we're going to change that to be, whoops, we're going to change that to be debug, the variable that we've set. And we also need to alter some bits and pieces here. So we need to define some different paths and stuff, because we've changed a couple of things. So this here, the absolute path to the WordPress directory, we're saying that as abs path, which is the current WordPress directory. And then with WP settings, that's the settings file. which is trying to look for the settings file within this thing. So what we can do here is change that to be either WP or WP content. Let's have a look. So we could change that to WP content. Yeah, we could do that. We could change that to WP. Okay, so that's the absolute path. The absolute path is this working directory, and then /WP, because that is that directory here, and that has the settings folder file in here, as well as all the other bits and pieces, the content and the includes and so forth, which should be okay. I've just thought there is something else I need to do with the Docker file. I probably won't play with it too much today, but that is setting the uploads directory to be writable by the web root user. I might do that in a minute. So let's just save that. Okay, so that's in there. So that's the directory name. Use themes. That's fine. That's getting the current working directory. I think we might need to change that as well. Let's just though focus on the Apache htaccess file. So htaccess file first, because the access file will also be included, and I've got one here which I'm just going to copy the whole thing like so. So here we're saying that we've got a, if the rewrite is on, which we've enabled through the Docker file, we redirect everything to the index file, and then here we're denying access to the WP config file, which is that one there, which is great because we don't want anybody to see anything in there. I think what I'm going to do is build this and see what happens. Let's save that because I know I've changed quite a lot and I haven't actually tested anything yet. So I'm just going to build it and see what happens. Let's do an ls, see where I am. I don't want to be there. I want to be up a bit. And I want to be down a bit. There we go. Right, so we want to do a build. Okay, and we also want to do an RM of test, and we also want to do a run of test as well. Now I know that this is going to fail because on the actual web browser, because we've defined a database that we just doesn't exist. But we're going to just try it out and see if we now have some access. So what I've done is I've just refreshed that page, and now it's gone to a blank screen, which in my eyes is a step in the right direction. So let's just go and see what is in the log files. So we can do an exec again, exec of bash. Let's do a tail -f of var log, var, is it log? Yeah, log Apache 2. And then error log is what we're asking for, and this cannot find the blog header. Yeah, I did need to change all that. Yeah. Okay, so let me just play around with this a little bit. So that was in the index file that's causing the problem, and loads WordPress environment and template. So we can do. I think we can do WP. Let me just bear with me a minute, guys. What I'm doing is I'm just playing around and just seeing exit. I think there's a problem with these paths. Give me a mo. And then from here we can do a tail. Oops, no, we can do a exec and then a tail -f var. And I do use -f because, sorry, I'm not actually on the on here. I use -f because if we're following the log, so every time I do a refresh, anything new comes into the log file, I'll pick it up. So Apache 2 error log. Okay. So I've removed the error by changing the WP blog header. But what it's trying to do, if I go back to the browser, is it's slowly, I don't know if you can see the loading bar, but it's going to time out, and it's going to time out because it doesn't have access to the database, which is what we're going to focus on next. Yay! So yay, here we go. It's saying it can't. It's complaining that it can't find the host MySQL. So you could argue that this is definitely going in the right direction because we now have this this thing generated by WordPress. So that's cool. Okay, let's put a pause on this for a minute and actually commit what we've done. So let's go back to the terminal because we've changed an awful lot of stuff, right? We've added the virtual host. We've done all of these things, and we should commit as we go. So I'm going to commit this directory. Just bear with me a minute, guys. I'm doing this off screen. So I'm just going to say adding HT access, composer. Actually, I need to I'll just say adding files. Just make it easier. Adding files. We're just going to commit that. We're also going to add this config file as well. If I did this on the command line, you'll be able to see what I'm doing, but just bear with me a minute. So that's fine. So we're adding that and that. Okay, so we're adding Docker file and vhost. Awesome. I'm going to add that Git Commit, adding WP config, and I suppose thinking about it, commit. What we should do is also pass the usernames and passwords and all that stuff through environment variables, which I'll probably do in a minute. Let me just finish tidying this up a minute. Bear with me a minute, guys. So restructuring. Can't spell it. Restructuring files. And what I'm going to do is just push that up. Commit and push. Yep, push. Cool. So if we went back to the browser here, go back into this thing, refresh this branch, we now have, we've removed all of this stuff. Sorry, something's sparked off. Oh, whatever. Let's just, yep, let's just. I've got about 4 phones that are now saying that there's an event that's happening. Sorry, bear with me. Let's just close all this down because this is just gonna. I've got a device lab, which because I do a lot of mobile applications and stuff. I develop those, and also I test for responsive web design. So I've got a device lab, which is like has a Velcro thing, and I have all of my phones. I've got quite a few, lots of legacy stuff, like old Samsung, old iPhones, and they've all got Velcro strips in the back, so they can connect to this felt device lab board. But of course they all go off as soon as I get an event. Anyway, that was a massive side chat. But here we've got all the bits and pieces now. We've got Apache and we've got MySQL. In here we have the sites available virtual host, which we created. That's looking cool. In here we have the site, and this is only what the site contains. This is all you need for installing WordPress at this stage anyway. So in our composer.json file is just that. I mean, 36 lines of code to install WordPress. That's not so bad. We've also added some config and that. Now in the config, I have added some sensitive bits and pieces. I mean, it's only root and test. So what I will do is inject these into inject these through Docker Compose rather than have these hard coded in here. I never like hard coding anything like this, but I just to get something to work. So it's kind of like sort of an iterative process, and I've just noticed here that I need to put that as the database name. So let me just quickly do that now. Otherwise I will forget. So in wp config, scroll up to here. That is the name of you. So I'm just going to put that in, save, and we're going to just updating database name. And we're just going to commit that, commit and push. Yes. We've also got on here, if I go back, we've also got the Docker file that I've created. So it's a very basic Docker file where we're copying over the virtual host. We're installing PHP and all of the bits and pieces. And we're assigning a document root. So that's the environment variable. We're setting that as the current working directory, which means that every time I go into the container through bash, this is where I'm going to land, which is great. There's no need to cd into this. We're exposing port 80 and we're running Apache in the foreground. Very, very simple stuff. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is actually focus on, let's go back into here. The next thing I'm going to do is focus on the Apache, sorry, not Apache, MySQL, get that actually running, and then I'll tweak all of these bits and pieces. So here we have a Docker file, which is just blank at the moment, and it's going to be very, 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 very simple. In fact, it's only going to be about 3 or 4 lines. So I suppose what I should do is just have MySQL for WordPress, because the thing is, I need to know, otherwise I'll just forget what this is all for. Install, because I got so many Docker files floating about on my system. So from MySQL, and so we're actually going to use the official MySQL image for this, because there is no other reason to there's no point in reinventing your wheel. I suppose it would make it slightly smaller if you wanted to really tweak it. So first name, I'm just going to put as my name, Peter Fisher. I should probably put my email address in there, but I'm not. And we're also going to have in here, we're going to have a directory called config, and in config, we're going to have another directory called schemas. And now, schemas. Because we might have some schemas that we want to include as we go, because we might want to, or will we? Let me just think about this. I don't know, because it's going to be, no, forgive me, we're not going to do any of that. Let's just delete all of that. That's fine. That's all we need to do. 2 lines of code. Because we're not going to, this is just going to be for an installation. And the installation will get changed every time you do that. Sorry, I'm just looking back at the stream. So, hi guys. Sorry for just rabbiting on and not actually having a look at this. I do say that I do need a second screen for the chat, so I can see it all the time. Thank you very much, Villalams. That's nice to say that it's a nice stream. I am literally just rabbiting on whilst I code. J.M. Benson, can you take a second to re-explain the architecture? What are you using for the Docker image registry? Sorry, yes, I have just gone through all this. This isn't a video. This is me live. Hello. Woo. Um, this isn't a video. This will be a video on Monday because I pushed this to the How to Code Well channel. But so the infrastructure is we're going to use the Docker Hub to push all of these things. It's going to simply be MySQL, and it's simply going to be Apache 2. That's all we're doing. We're not making it any more complicated. I think Jim M. Benson has gone. If you are there, please say hey. You asked to see the Docker file. Now there's 2 Docker files. I've just created the Docker file for MySQL. It's literally that. And the second Docker file is this one here. So we have the very basic. We're using stretch as our base image, and we have the environment variable, which is doc root. We're installing all of these things, which are kind of like the basics for getting WordPress running. So we're going to use Apache 2, which means that we need to have the lib Apache 2 module. We're going to use PHP 7.0, and we're using MySQL, XML, and curl. After that, we're going to enable mod rewrite. And then after that, we're going to tidy up after ourselves and remove all of the bits and pieces that we don't need. So when you do an apt-get update, which is this up here, we generate what's called a package cache, and that package cache we don't need anymore. We don't need it because we're not going to do an update or an upgrade after this, so we can remove that. So we're going to remove the package cache, remove anything that we don't need, and purge all of the configuration. After that, we're going to do a we're going to copy, or not copy, we're going to add, because they are different, the default conf, which is in here, config sites enabled default conf. This is a virtual host configuration. We're going to add that into here, which is sites available 00-default.conf. After that, the next instruction is to actually set the working directory to be the document root, which is that, which means that every time I go into the container, if I went into the bash shell, for example, we're going into here. Okay, which is great because, you know, I'm lazy and I don't want to do cd into all of this stuff. We're then copying site, which is this folder here, which is the whole of the WordPress stuff. Right, we're copying that into period. Period is defined by the current working directory, and that working directory has been defined like so. So we're copying the site into this folder. Next, we're going to expose port 80 because that's what we need to do. And then we are going to simply run Apache in the foreground. That is it. I apologize, J.M. Benson, if you've probably left. And I apologize that I didn't go through it in depth. And I didn't go through it when you asked. I'm so sorry. I'll try my hardest now to look at the stream, look at the chat, but I'm running out of space. I really do need to invest in a second screen. And then maybe some sort of flashing lights and some sort of maybe a vibrating chair, which will go off every time someone asks a question, but I do apologize. Okay, so the next thing is this MySQL Docker file that I've just created. And we're literally just doing from MySQL. That's all we need to do, I hope. So let's go and build that up. So let's go into the terminal here. Let's clear this down. Oh, actually, no, I'm in. So you can see that it timed out. So let's exit that. I'm actually in that container. Let's clear that down. Next thing we're going to do is come out of Apache 2 and go into MySQL, which is in here. And then we're going to do a Docker, if I can spell it, Docker build. And we're going to give it temp MySQL as the tag. So that's -t. And the current build context is the current working directory, like so. So it's going to download that and pull all the bits and pieces. So this is the thing that takes time, unfortunately. Excuse me. So we're just going to wait for this to all go, download and install. Um, I can't believe I missed that question. I'm really sorry, Jim Benson. That's JM Benson. That I really need to get better at this streaming malarkey. So let's do an ls of that. That's fine. Clear that screen. Docker images. We should now have another image. In fact, we've got quite a few. Let's tidy this up. Let's do a docker rmi -f. And we don't need anything that doesn't yet have a container. So I guess what I could do is docker image prune. Are you sure you want to continue? So this is going to remove all dangling images. Clear that down. Docker images. Docker. Come on. There we go. So we've removed all the dangling ones, basically the ones that aren't being used, don't have anything attached to them. Basically, those images were the ones that were broken. And we have this temp MySQL jobby here, and we haven't defined an environment variable for the password. But I think we can do that when we actually run it. So let's do a docker run, and we're just going to oh gosh, sorry, docker run. Give it a name, and we're just going to do test MySQL. Do it in the background, and we're going to pass in an environment variable, which I can never remember. So I'm going to just check through my notes. I don't even think I've got it in my notes. Oh, great. I may have to just check this on the net, but I think it is. Oh no, I do have it in my notes. Sorry, it's this. It's this. So that is equal to, that's the root password. We're just going to call that test. And the Docker run requires at least one. Oh, of course we do. Yeah, we need to also give the name of the image that we're using, which is temp-mysql. You can all see this, right? Yeah, cool. MySQL. Okay, cool. So that has apparently created a container which is running. So we do docker ps-a because I'm never confident that it is. A just gets everything regardless of whether it's running or not. Docker ps just gives you the running containers, but they're both running, which is cool. Hey Slayerdarth, how's it going? Hope you're well. Hope you're doing all right. Okay, so let's jump in. Let's do docker exec. Let's jump into this container and just see if I can access it. So let's do it, and then I think I can never remember. What did I call this? This is test MySQL. I need to get better at naming these things. And we're going to go in as MySQL. And we're going to give -u, which is the root, -p, and we gave the password of test. There we go. So we now have a MySQL Docker container running, which means that we can now connect this to what am I trying to say? The Wordpress web server, which is awesome. So let's just exit out of that, and I'm just going to grab some water. That's really great news, Slayerdarth. So you've managed to get your password and value now injected. That's great. That's great. That's cool. Arguments are different from environment variables because environment variables get baked with the Docker image, and arguments, so the Docker instruction arg, they get removed after the image has been created. Might be something worth playing with, because if you do Docker history and look at the history of your image, you can then see anything in clear text, which is never a good thing. Okay, so That's cool. Apologies for my coughing. I don't smoke. I promise. I don't smoke. Ooh, what happened there? Okay, so I'm just going to commit this Docker file to GitHub. So we're just going to commit that. Adding Docker file for MySQL. We're going to commit and push all of these things. And then go into the browser, go back up again. Okay, refresh our page, and then go into MySQL. We have a Docker file, which is just that. That's all we need. That's cool. Nice and light. I like it. No, I do agree with you, Slayerdarth. The documentation isn't tidiest. The thing is with documentation is that the documentation sometimes takes longer to write than it does for the actual application to be developed, and so you're always chasing your tail. You're always chasing. You're always asking the question of, "Am I on this version?" But I do think some of it is good. I do think some of it's good. I mean, it's certainly better than it used to be. I mean, when it used to be, it was like, well, it's the same with any project. The documentation is rubbish right at the start usually. I mean, look at this stuff. I mean, all this is going to show you is how to do a Docker Compose. So I need to work on that. But going back to this, though, we are going to work on the actual Docker Compose part next, because we now have those two images spinning up and stuff. So that's what I'm going to play with now. Let's go back into here. And we have our blank Docker Compose file. So what we need to do, excuse me, is we're going to do volumes. No, we're not. We're going to do version. And that version needs to be a string, and we're just going to set it to 3 for now. We're not going to set any volumes yet. Or should I? No, not yet. Let's just keep this nice and simple first. Services. That is going to have 2 services, one of which is going to be the web server. And the other one is going to be MySQL. I'm going to change web server to be Apache because that's more of a description of what it actually is. I mean, it's a web server, but what actually is it? Is it a Tomcat server? Is it an Apache server? No, it's Apache 2 server. We're going to set. Well, I tell you what. Let's just do. I'm running ahead of the game. We'll put that down there, but we'll just focus on Apache for now. So we've got. What am I trying to do? Build is we're going to designate the build, which is in the folder Apache 2, and I'll explain all of this in a minute. The next one is we're going to always set it to restart. Restart always. And we're also going to designate some ports. So in the Docker file, in Apache 2 Docker file, here we're exposing the port, but we're not publishing the port. We are literally just exposing the port. It's that is a different thing. You need to publish the port that you've exposed. So we can do this here and that was what the -p does in the Docker run command. But so we can do this here by doing 80 and then the host 80 like that, which is fine. And I think these need to be in as a string. We can also have more than one port as well, so that's going to be like so. And then what we're going to do is, just for argument's sake, we're going to create a network. So down here, just do networks, just to make sure that this network doesn't get conflicting with anything else. Because I do run several of these things quite frequently. I mean, one of the clients that I'm working on at the moment has lots. So let's let's do this, and the networks, I'm just going to give it a name. I'm just going to give it a name of WordPress install, because then I know exactly what it is. Like so. And we're going to do network here. Networks. And we're going to link that to the network of WordPress install that we're creating. Yeah, so Slayer Darth for anyone on the How to Code Well channel, which this will be on Monday, hopefully, if I can get a chance to encode it and publish it, has mentioned that there is a Vagrant image for WordPress installs if I'm interested. Yes, kind of, I guess, maybe. I'm not a big Vagrant fan. I quite like Docker, but I know that Vagrant has a Docker provider that you can use. But yeah, I think doing it myself means that I'm more aware of what it is and how it's configured, right? Rather than relying on someone else's tooling. It's just, and also I quite like this challenge. I was doing this yesterday, and with a client's WordPress site, as I mentioned in the first part of this stream, and I just thought there needs to be some way that I can quickly spin this up, and not everyone uses Composer for creating their WordPress stuff. So, hey, Hertox, this isn't for a client. No, this is just for me. But yesterday I was working on with a client on a WordPress site that they had. Basically, they've got a site already, and they asked me to simplify it, which meant taking out every plugin that wasn't needed, because there were so many, and those plugins did all sorts of things and similar things as well. So you ended up with like 101 ways to do one thing, which was just stupid, and they were like, and obviously they were getting confused. I was getting confused. We ended up just agreeing that we needed to just, start again, right? And so in order to do that, I needed to go through this process of building WordPress, or actually just installing it. And then I thought that because not unfortunately, WordPress is something that I deal with on a semi-regular basis. I mean, most of the stuff I do is Symfony-based stuff, like APIs and all that stuff, as well as all the mobile apps. But there are a couple of times where I have to do WordPress work, and there's always a period of time where I have to install it. And so I'm thinking this could be my way of doing that quite easily. So that's kind of some background. So, yeah, yes, Slayer Darth has said that he finds Vagrant a little bit easier to learn. Yeah, I probably should give it a little bit more time, invest a bit more time in actually running it. I have used Vagrant before. I have played with it, but it's just the teams that I'm working with at the moment, they are Docker focused, and so that's just the way it is. So and with the fact that it's just so easy to deploy with the Swarm and everything. But anyway, let's move on. So we've got this Docker Compose file, and what I need to do is actually work on actually adding this. So let's I'll just do that, Hertox, and then I'll get back to you in a mo. I've got stuff in my head that I need to get on the screen, so just bear with me a mo. Okay, so we're going to deal with MySQL again. We need to do a build, designate where the Docker file actually is. So that is in the MySQL directory, because we're in here, which is the root directory, you could argue. So the build here is Apache 2, so that's where the Docker file is, and obviously this is where the Docker file is for MySQL. So build MySQL. Again, we're going to set this to to be restarted always as well, just because it's easier to do that. I mean, this is literally just going to be for installing purposes. And then also we're going to supply some environment variables, and this is where I could actually do some work around injecting the passwords and stuff. Environment, I always spell that wrong. There's 3 N's, environment. That looks good. And we're going to set it's an array, so here, and I'm just going to copy this and then equal that to, or set that to just test. I mean, that's just, we can change all of this later to make it a little bit more secure and stuff. But I guess one thing I should mention is that you can have more than one Docker Compose file. So you could have a Docker Compose -dev or a Docker Compose production or test or whatever. And then when you do Docker Compose, you can do a -f, and you can run like the first Docker Compose file and then run another Docker Compose file and another Docker Compose file. And what you're doing there is you're overriding rules that you set in your first Docker Compose file. So for example, if you wanted to run it in development mode, you could run Docker Compose -f production and then -f and then dev, and then you know that you're in the development world, but you've kind of overwritten the environment variables that you've set for production. So I might do that. Right, so let's have a look. I'm not going to supply any volumes yet. I will do so, but not at the moment. So this is looking pretty good. Obviously, I need to assign that to be a network. Network. One thing I'm going to just rabbit on about is the pluralization in here. I'm sure there's a reason for it, but excuse me. There, you can obviously have more than one environment, but that's environment. You can have more than one network as well, but that's networks, right? So and volumes is spelt volumes with an S. So this always throws me. I always put an S on the end because there's more than one environment variable. But I guess it's because this isn't variables. This is the environment that you're working in. But hey, anyway, it just throws me a couple of times. So that looks pretty good. I'm just going to run this and see what happens, and then I'll answer the chat, so just bear with me a minute. So I'm going to just jump into the terminal here, and I'm just going to clear down the screen. Where am I? I'm in the MySQL directory, ls. And I think what I'm going to do is I'll demonstrate the build process first and make sure that works. So let's do Docker images, and what I'm going to do is simply remove all of these. And I guess I need to remove all of the, let's do -a. Containers as well, so I'm just going to do -f, and I've called this what have I called this? Temp with a P, obviously. Test temp MySQL. Oh no, that's the images, sorry. Test was that one, and then test MySQL. There we go, so we've removed those. And again, with the Docker images, I'm going to remove, let's just clear that down, make some room. Docker images, I'm just going to remove all of these, RMI. Don't need that, but hey-ho. Let's copy that. And I guess what we could do just for speed, Docker image prune minus help. I can never remember what this is. This is, yeah, -a. -a-f. Boom. There we go. That has removed everything. That is such a killer move. That's like a KO in terms of like a fight. Boom, you've just removed everything. So let's clear that down. If I spelled clear, that's great. So if I did Docker images, we now have nothing. So we're now in the directory, obviously, with the Docker Compose file. So I can do Docker Compose, if I can spell it. Let's do it. Let's just quickly do a build. network must be in a mapping. So I knew this was going to be a problem. Networks. So what was the error there? It was must be a mapping, not a string. Networks. I guess let's try it without networks for a start. Let's see if that works first. I think there is just a problem with my indentation. I mean, it'll spin up a network anyway. Is invalid because it contains, which is an invalid type. It should be a string. Of course, it should be a string. Sorry, this is where it all goes wrong. Where it all goes wrong. So I think we can just do that. I think. There we go. So we go back into the terminal and we can see that it's being built. So whilst this is building, I will go back to the chat and just have a little convo. So to answer Hurt Talks, yes, I'm a freelancer. I'm a freelancer and I've been for a while. I also run the How to Code Well YouTube channel as well. So my passion is in teaching and just sort of giving, this sounds really corny and cheesy, giving back to the community because the community, when I started building websites nearly a decade and a half ago, it was, we didn't have things like GitHub. We didn't have a Stack Overflow or anything like that. And so it was very, very difficult to learn as you would today. And there was lots of people who took me under their wings and stuff and really helped me. And I was very persistent, like a persistent puppy, I suppose, asking for help and stuff on various forums and things. I mean, I've got a degree in e-commerce and multimedia, and I also did 2 courses before that based on programming and IT in general, but that was years and years and years ago now. So, and a lot of the stuff that I do is obviously self-taught because the stuff that is out in the wild these days just isn't being taught in university. In fact, one of my greatest memories, I suppose, of university, actually learning from university, is the lecturer telling me that the stuff that I'll learn in the first year will be outdated in the 4th year, which was so true. Which was so true. I mean, we were doing things like SOAP and Java and RESTful APIs and that kind of thing using XML. Now JSON is the de facto if you're doing anything like that. And so that I needed to teach myself that. I also have knowledge in Linux. So I did an LPIC and other things like that. But I am essentially a freelancer stroke consultant. And yeah, I mean, this is a passion. It's a passion of mine. The How to Code Well channel talks about freelance, and it also has a lot of tutorials. So I do a lot of PHP, a lot of Docker, a lot of MySQL, all of that kind of stuff as well. So I'm trying to build up a platform. I've got about 140 odd videos out, mainly geared towards the beginners. But, it's slowly progressing into the more advanced stuff. I recently did a tutorial on PHP interfaces, if you're interested, which was pretty fun to do. Yeah. And hi, Sky Rob. You kind of know WordPress, but you don't know what Docker Composer is. Can you explain? Of course I can. Let me just change a couple of bits and pieces around before I do that, though. So this is Docker Compose, and I do apologize for my coughing. Docker Compose is a way of defining the services that you're using. Okay, and a service is a container. And you can obviously have more than one container. This will go on to things like Docker Swarm. So, I mean, I'm in my consultant life, that's what I deal with, Docker Swarms and all that. I'm kind of slowly moving into the DevOpsy area, even though I'm not really that. I prefer code. Anyway, so this is Docker Compose, like I said, and you do it in JSON format. And the JSON format is structured like this. It's very simple to read, in the sense that you designate a service, and then you say where the image is. In this case, we're building it from the Apache 2 directory here, which is that. But that can also be image, so you can actually download an image from the Docker Hub or whatever registry you're logged into. You can then supply different properties, I suppose you could call them, to the container when it's being built, or to the service, I should say, because we're talking about services now, not containers. Because this is really about, Docker Compose is really about deployment. And you can also have Docker Stack as well, or Docker, for the Docker Swarm, which I haven't even mentioned yet. But here we're defining two services, Apache and MySQL. And with MySQL, with all these services, you can then supply environment variables and all sorts of other things. You can even configure networks, you can configure labels and all of that stuff. So it's extremely powerful. It's extremely powerful, and I will be just touching the surface today of it. If you're interested in Docker, then there is I do have a course that is done by Manning Publications called Docker in Motion, which goes through Docker in extreme sort of theory detail, the first 2 bits anyway, and then we crack on with the actual building of the things. And then that we're creating a web server and an Apache web server and a MySQL database as well. But we talk about the differences between Docker, Vagrant, and other bits and pieces like virtualization versus containerization. We also delve into web services, not web servers, microservices as well. And I also talk about Docker Compose in far more depth than I'm doing here, and also volumes, which is something that we haven't looked at yet. But yeah, I'll put a link to that if you're interested, if I can find it. Oh, excuse me. So this is this is Docker in Motion if you're interested. I have mentioned this several times in previous streams that I do, and these streams I will I back up and archive onto the How to Code Well YouTube channel. Okay, so I'm a little bit out of depth with the this chat, so I'm scrolling up to see. So Slayer Darth is also self-taught. To be honest, I think most programmers are to just keep up with the game, but fair play to you. It was difficult trying to stay ahead. Yeah, so I know a lot of programmers that are they still work on the very old stuff, right? Still work on the very old stuff, and that's their comfort zone. That's what they don't like any of this new stuff, which is fine. You know. Because you've got companies like banks and you've got companies like hosting providers and all of that stuff that do need to work with legacy stuff. And so they do need to have those developers who are aware of the legacy stuff. And that's their sort of comfort zone, if you will, which is fine. So... yeah, so you don't really Hertox doesn't really. I personally work in blah blah blah. So unfortunately, the link has been removed. So the PHP part isn't really appealing to you. That's fine. But the beauty of Docker is that you can throw anything at it, which is great. Oh, you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Thank you. Thank you very much. If anyone has anything that they want me to talk about in, say, either in the future, Coffee and Codes that I do on Twitch, or if they want a proper sort of tutorial series, because someone asked me to do a tutorial series on HTML forms, and I did a big series on that. If anyone's got any suggestions, then do shout, because I will be I'm very interested in providing content that you guys want rather than content that I think you want, because everyone attacks things from different angles. So thanks, Hertox. That's very kind of you to subscribe. Yeah. Sorry, yes, I called this Jason. It's YAML. But it's sort of similar in the sense of how it looks. So yeah, do forgive me for that. Just having a look at what Skyrob said about the Docker is building a container optimized for service. Let's say Wordpress container for installation and service. Let me think. Yes, Docker is for building not just a container, but many containers for the services that we choose. Yes. So off the back of this, we've got 2 containers. And so when you do say WordPress -doc :docker is good for building the perfect container for the server. Yes, but you have to. The thing is, and this is something I talk about in depth, Skyrob, in the Docker in Motion course, is that you shouldn't see your container as like just a bucket of stuff that you can throw things in. A container really, in the purest sense, needs to have a single responsibility. So it should either be a web server, it should either be a MySQL server, it shouldn't be both. Okay, because then you're confusing, you're making what I've termed as a big confused container. Container should do one job and one job properly. It's a bit like the Unix philosophy where you have one program, one command that does something really, really well, and then you can pipe that standard output as standard input into another application. So always think about making it as small as you can and as light as you can, and that will certainly help for deployment because you can slowly move things in and out, or quickly move things in and out. So yes, what we're doing here is we're building a series of containers for WordPress. Oh, so Hertox, you're working on Node.js. Yeah, see, this is like new stuff. Well, it's not really new stuff, but it's new stuff in the sense that this was never a thing when I was at uni, those many, many years ago. So all the new kids off the block, they are working on things that I am self-teaching to keep up with. But that's the difference between having experience and having the experience of learning as well as the experience of actually dealing with something that is in a production environment and stuff. Oh gosh, Slayerdarth, that is a so Slayerdarth has asked, I've been doing this for a while, or they've been doing this for a while. Yeah, of course, not me, sorry. So how long has it taken the UK to make its IT curriculum relevant? Oh, don't get me started. Don't get me started. I was at a British Computer Society event the other day, and someone there was talking about education in the UK for IT, and yeah, let's not talk about that because that will wind me up. So Hertox has asked, what is the difference between Docker Compose build and Docker Compose up? Okay, yeah, I should have mentioned this. I do apologize. Docker Compose build is we're building the services. We're not doing anything with them. We are literally just building the services, which in turn builds you the images. So if I now go back into, and I suppose this is a good segue to get back into it. Here, yeah, so I've just literally done a Docker Compose build. Let's clear that down. So now I have Docker images. If I can spell it. We now have these images. So these are the images that we've created. The WordPress install.git, and that's happened because of the parent directory, as well as MySQL. And these are the base images down here. But if I did docker ps-a, we don't have any containers. So the up means that you are spinning up the containers, and build is simply building the images. Remember that a container is merely an instance of an image. Excuse me. So, and you can also supply different things to the up as well. So, for example, -d is we'll run it in the background in detached mode and so forth, which is what we're going to be playing with in a minute. Let me just clear down the screen, make some room. And also, I should say, if we did docker compose up -d, or just docker compose up, and we don't have the images, they will automatically be built. Might demonstrate that in a minute, but let's just see if we can get these containers running. Let's do a docker compose, not composer, up, and then -d. And so we can see that we're creating these containers. Now, these containers, I should mention the names of these containers, and this is something that I'm going to really focus on in the Docker in Motion course, is that the container names are automatically created for you. You can actually define the names of the containers within the Docker Compose file, but if you don't, these are automatically created for you, a bit like just when you do a Docker run without -name, blah, 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 blah. But when they're automatically created for you, they base themselves off of the parent working directory, which in this case is WordPress -install and then .git. So it just kind of sandwiches them together, and then underscore the name of the container that you're building, or not the container, the name of the service that you're building, and then it always gives it a numeric number, because you could also have many containers off of this. So, whoops, what was that? Sorry, I just dropped something. A plug just fell off of the. That's a bit spooky. A plug just fell off of the desk. I didn't touch it. Docker PS, and let's do -a. -a is getting all of them, regardless of whether they are running or not. So here we have these two, and I do apologize that the messy output here. It is because the names are too long, and my terminal window is too small. But the important things are the statuses here. So up about a minute, And we can see that the ports for MySQL, not for MySQL, what am I talking about? The Apache 2, they've already been published. And that was done through here. So it's Docker Compose is extremely powerful. You can basically set, like, I guess I could say it as a manifesto of how your services should run. Excuse me. So that is looking very, very good. And what I'm going to do is just test this thing out. So I think if I just go into here, bear with me a minute, guys. There we go. Okay, so I've just refreshed that IP address, and we can see that we now have that that error has been removed, that timeout error, because we now have MySQL. We have connected it, and we've connected it through this link, which I will try and find my cursor. Here we go. Oh no, we haven't set the link. No, we haven't connected it. Sorry, do forgive me. What am I talking about? We haven't connected it yet. We do need to link it. So here it's saying that we just don't have a database installed. So we do need to link it. That's what we need to do. Yes, Hertox, you could call it like a recipe. This is kind of like, and it's Docker Compose is supposed to be written in such a way that you can just quickly read it and see what it is that what you need. So you can write this in English, and the Docker Compose translates all of this into infrastructure. So yeah, I guess I tell you what, if you want an analogy of a recipe, Docker Compose is the recipe. The Docker file is the method. All right, so how you do it, okay, and then the containers, if you want to take it even further, is the meal. And you could have a starter, a main, and a dessert, and that's where your services come in. So that is the starter, that's the main, and that's the dessert. This is the recipe for each of those things. The Docker files are the method to actually spin that up. I should write that down. Okay, so what we need to do is link the two things together. I don't know if you could hear that. That's my cats fighting outside. Oh, good. I might have some present when I come back. Brilliant. So what we need to do is set some links. So from here, we can do, from there, we can do link. Let's just make sure that all of this works. Bear with me a mo. Two seconds, sorry. Bear with me. That's what I want. And it's that file. I've gone and changed. My windows are getting all over the place. There we go. Right. So, okay. So it's links with an S, and we can provide a series, an array, if you will, of links, and a link is merely a service that you wish to connect to. So in this case, we're connecting to MySQL. And we can have all sorts of links here. If there was a Memcache server, you would link to that too. And in the last live stream, I talked about MySQL. I talked about connecting to as an IP address and why that is a bad idea when you're using Docker containers, because every time you spin up and spin down a container, the IP address changes. Well, here we're designating the link through the service name. The service name is the thing that won't change. So we're linking that to MySQL. Okay, what I'm going to do is just go into the terminal again. Let's save that first before I do anything like that. And I'm going to do a Docker up. And notice that here, Docker compose up -d. Notice that it's not touching MySQL, because MySQL hasn't changed, but I've just changed a linkage between Apache 2 and the MySQL service, and so they are recreating, and which is done. So now if I go back to the browser, hopefully something will change. Okay, bear with me a mo. If I go back to the browser, we have this error here. It's saying, but not able to select WP install database. This is because when we've created our MySQL container, but we haven't actually given it a database to use. So, whoops, let's not do that. So what I need to do is create the database when the container is first running. So we're using the MySQL image, and I think there is an environment variable that we can use. I'm just trying to have a look for that, which will create the database when it's running. Bear with me, Mo. Yeah, well, here we go. So there is a MySQL underscore database. Let me show you the browser. This thing here, MySQL underscore database. This variable is optional and allows you to specify the name of the database to be created on image startup. If the username and password was supplied, see below, blah, blah, blah. So these are all the bits and pieces that we've done. Then they will be granted super user access using grant all. So what we need to do, copy that into here. And we can pass this in as an environment variable. So we're going to equal that to be the database of think. What did I call it? Let's go into I called it something, didn't I? Let me see. Site. Yeah, here we are. WP config. I called it WP install. There we go. So I'm going to copy that into there. Now, we can start playing around with some environment variables for Apache as well, because we could change that, blah, 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 and that will break in WP config because we're not assigning that. So what we can do is put that back to here, but we can also, let's just copy that, do this. So environment, okay, so that's the password and that's the database as well. So yes, there is duplication here, but these are different containers. So you have the password and then you have the database, which means that we can then access the environment variables in here too. So we've got an environment variable called dev. What we can actually change that to be, let's do get dev. In fact, thinking about it, we don't need any of this, do we? We don't need any of this. Thinking about it, because here we've got. Let me just have a look. Think, because now here we're defining our rules based on the environment that we need, that we're passing in. But in fact, we can pass in the whole thing. So, for example, we can do. But I don't want to evaluate. I don't want to put the password in as an environment variable. That's a big no-no. Just imagine if someone got hold of this container and then echoed that out. So I think for now, what we're going to do is just leave it like that. But I think what I could do is just do hash, do db name, and just set that to be the environment variable, which is, I think I called it MySQL database, which now means that I have a very configurable thing. And again, with the host, we can also set that as an environment variable too. Actually, no, I'm not going to bother with that. But it means that we can remove the DB name from all of these things, because that will be automatically set. I still don't like doing this. I still don't like putting the passwords and everything in here, especially when we've got those in Compose. Anyway, I'll have a think, and see how we can get around that. So we're setting the database. We're also setting the root password here, which is test. I'm not going to put that in as an environment variable, just that. Let's just double check that that is correct. Yeah, that is correct. Okay, excellent. All right, let's save that. Now, what I need to do is, because I've actually changed code within the site, I need to do a rebuild. And I suppose this is a great opportunity to demonstrate that doing a Docker Compose up will also do a build when the images are down. So let's go to terminal again, and I'm just going to do a docker ps-a clear. Sorry. There we go. Docker rm -f, and we're just going to remove that one and that one. No such contain. Oh, these are images, aren't they? They're not. Dolt. Bear with me. rm -f. We're looking for the names. Here we go. That one and that one. Boom. So we don't have any images now. Sorry, don't have any containers now. Let's get rid of these images. Let's do a prune. Let's do a reverse search of prune. And there we go. So we've removed all of the images. So docker images. We don't have anything. That's great. So now if I did a, just make sure I'm in the right directory, we are. If we did a reverse search of up-d, it's going to download all of the images again because we don't have any. So, I mean, this is an extremely easy way of just deploying code. One line, and you're deploying both a MySQL server as well as a database server. So, you know, this is the beauty of Docker. So we're just going to let that go and download all the bits and pieces. It's going to moan a little bit, but that's fine. And here, this is the up-d to rebuild the image. So that's just a message there. So that's firing through. firing through. The reason why I've had to do that is because I've changed the file, the wp-config file, so I've needed to rebake that into the image. However, I could, and I probably will be, adding some volumes to this, which will allow me to access the files without having to rebuild the image every time, because that is a pain in the ass. So that's all done. Let's clear that down. Do a docker ps -a again. Well, just do a docker ps because I'm confident that they're now up and running. That's good. Which means that if I go back to here and refresh our page, we now have a Docker, a MySQL installation. Yay, yay. Oh yeah. Sorry, I'll never do that again. So yeah, and that is basically where I want this to be. This is the end game, which is awesome. I suppose what I should do is go back to the documentation, or the very limited documentation that I'm writing, and update how it is that what it is that you need to do. So I'm just going to commit some bits, so bear with me a minute. So I'm going to commit that file there. So adding db name to, getting db name from env. And I'm also going to commit, finally, the compose file. So adding docker compose. And what I'm going to do is also update the README for this. So we've got the docker compose bit. So this here, we're going to do install install the web server, and or not install, just say run containers. That makes sense. Run containers, and that's just going to do there we go. Boom. And the command that I was using to do all that funky stuff was literally this. So I'll just copy that, put in a $ symbol, copy that. So that is what you need. What you need. Okay, so the uninstall process, we can remove the containers. So I suppose the uninstall process is literally just that Docker machine, although there isn't. No, okay, I could do it through Docker Compose. To remove all the things, we can do. If I go back to terminal, if I did Docker Compose -help, and we should see all of the things that we can do with Docker Compose, including restarting, pulling, pushing. So it's very, very, very powerful. But we can also do rm to remove stop containers, and we can also tear containers down as well, and we can kill the containers if we want to. Yeah. So we could do it like that. We could do docker compose stop, and then docker compose rm maybe. But I suppose we could also do this individually. So let's just do an ls. Or let's just clear this down. So it's docker rm -f, and it's that one. Whoops. And it's also that one. So that's to kill the containers. And I'm just going to copy that. And let's just run this. So that'll do that. And then go back into the tutorial. Put in here. So this is 1, 2, 3. All the things. Okay, and then removing the images. I'm not going to put in the heavy-handed prune command, because that will remove literally every image that you've got. And this is why I do things in the Docker machine, because then you can isolate your projects, which is so handy when you're a freelancer. So what I can do is Docker images and just remove the images one by one. So Docker rm or Docker images rm, because I don't want to remove rm-f. We'll do a forcible. No, we won't bother. We just do that one, that one, that one, and that one. And that should now remove. Ooh, that had an error. Hang on. Docker images. Oh, I'm sorry. Forgive me. I'm not even in the terminal. Sorry. Yeah, I spelt Debian wrong. As you could guess. No, I didn't. Oh, I need to. So that's stretch. Sorry, I need to designate the tag. So there we go. So that now should have no images. So I'm just going to copy that from here, if I can. Can I? Come on, Magic Mouse. I know it's been a long, long stream, but keep working. Keep working. So 1, 2, no, 1, 2, 3. So that just removes the images, like so. Okay, so we can install it. We can we've got Composer here, Docker Compose, the uninstallation method as well. So I'm going to save that, and what I'm going to do is we'll remove that for now. We don't need that. Just for ease, let's do a Git commit. So this is adding documentation. Push that. Wonderful. And then we go back to the browser here. Refresh here. And we now have, this is the file. What I'll do is I'll just put this in the chat again. So this is what I'm working on. So we now have an updated installation process and an updated uninstallation process as well. The installation process is literally that, which is extremely simple. But what I'm going to do is just do a bit of dog food. So just sort of, because you need to test this stuff out. So, testing out what it is that I've created. So I'm going to tear everything down. I'm going to remove everything that I've done. And then I'm going to bring it back up based on this documentation. And if that works, then that is a very good, that's a very good place. I know that there's a lot of things that we could be doing better with Docker volumes and stuff. But for now, this looks good. I'll probably do, because I've gone on for a while. I've rapidly on for almost 3 hours. Blimey. What I'm going to do is probably do the volumes after this. So the first thing we need to do to uninstall all of these things is we're just going to remove the machine. So let's do that now. Go back into the tutorial, which is here. Let's clear this down. So just to make sure that everything works, there we go. We've removed the machine. The machine doesn't exist, and all the images have gone. All of the containers have gone. Boom. Okay, so after that, we're going to just follow the process that I've got in the repository here of installing it. So we're going to create a new machine. Go back into the terminal. And in fact, what we're going to do is we're going to go even further than this, actually, because there is a first step that I haven't even spoke of, and that is actually doing a Git checkout or git clone. So let's just do that now. So so your requirements is also git as well. So it's always good to go back over your documentation just to make sure that everything you've said is correct. So git clone. So here it's just clone the repo, and that is simply just having a look at the stream here. Is this, here we go, sorry. So let's go back into here. And what I need to do is just put that in. Oops, no, that needs another one. And it is simply git clone that. And what I like doing, is personal preference, is I like having a directory, defining the directory that I'm cloning into with the extension of .git, because that means that that folder is a Git folder. So it's not confusing over the, you know, when you're looking at all your folders, some of them are in, like for example, they could also be in SVN. So let's save this, and then let's just remove everything. Let's just start from scratch, shall we? So I'm gonna just copy that into. Bear with me a minute, guys. I'm just going to commit that again. Push that. Okay, so we're going to do something pretty damn drastic. We're going to come out of this, which is in my site directory, and then we're going to do an rm -rv of the whole repository. Boom. Oh, and I should have done that as sudo. Sorry. Sudo. Sorry, I should have shown you that as I was doing it. That I basically have removed everything that I've just done. All of my work is gone. But because of the power of GitHub, we can pull that back. So that's what we're going to do. So let's clear down this. Let's actually type properly. Clear down the screen. Follow the browser. So I'm going to refresh this. And we need to do a git clone to clone that. So we go into the tutorial. No, we don't. We go into the terminal and we just do this, cloning into there. Now what we need to do is switch the branch to be the develop branch, because this is master branch, I think. Let's just cd into where that and do a git branch. Yeah, so it's master. So what I need to do is a git, I think it's a fetch to pull down, is that right? Bear with me a minute. It's a pull of, no, it's not. Let's clear that down. I can switch it through here, that's no problem. Hold on. Branches. There we go. Right, and check out that branch. That's what I want you to do. I want you to check out that branch. I don't want you to crash. I don't want you to fail. I just want you to check it out as that. Thank you. Right, so in the tutorial now, we're back to where we were. But with the Apache site, we only have this. This is all we need to install WordPress. This is all we need, nothing more. We have our compose file and our Docker files and everything, which is great. Excuse me. So, right, let's get back to it, because I need to go and run and grab my lunch in a minute. So let's just do an ls. Let's now, all we need to do, we have no images. We have our, we've removed our Docker machine. So if I did Docker machine active, we shouldn't have anything on here. No active host found, which is fine. If we follow the browser for the next part, which is this bit here, so we're going to create our machine. So let's go into the tutorial, not the tutorial, the terminal. Run this, and it's going to do some pre-flight checks. That's all good. And then it's going to create us our Docker machine with boot to Docker in there and all that stuff. Hopefully this is gonna work. The other commands that I've got, the next commands that I've got will be output in the screen on the terminal. So these two here, the WordPress, the evaluating the envs to the current shell, or printing them out, I should say, and then evaluating. So these get printed out for you in the terminal. So we're just come on. We're just waiting for that to decide to work. It's always this waiting for IP bit. It's always that bit which is the slowest. There we go. So now it's provisioning, and now it's doing all those things. And now can we see that we've got the this is how you do the env, which is what I've just copied at the top. Let's clear this down. Do that. There are all the environment variables. Copy this line of code, put that in, and boom, we are now in the Docker machine. So if I did Docker images, no images, but we have the machine. Let's clear this down, and then let's follow on to the next part of this, which is the composer install. Because obviously, I blasted through. I've nuked the whole thing. So this is exactly as fresh as it is on GitHub. So the next thing then is to do click, is to do this composer install. But composer install needs to be changed because we're not, I want everything to run from the current working directory, which is the root of the whole thing, where Docker Compose is. So there is some changes that I do need to do. This is so good going back over the documentation after you've written it, because then you can pick these things up. So we're going to go back into here, and what we need to do, scroll down to this part, is we need to do -d or -d, and that defines the directory. So the directory is Apache 2 and its site, because that is the composer file is in here, and this means this is where it's all going to be installed. So we need to do that. So this is coming from the current working directory. So I'm going to save that. I do apologize. I should have done this last time. Commit the directory again. So we're just going to add some more documentation. Oh, excuse me, and see if whoops, and push that up. Okay, so let's go back to the browser. I do apologize, we're jumping around. Let's refresh, scroll down. So this here, this is what we've just done here. So we're going to copy that, go back into the terminal, and let's just make sure that that is where we are. That's good. So then we're going to paste that in and run this, and there we go. So now it's installed WordPress in that directory. And if we did, if we went back into the browser again, not the browser, sorry, tutorial window, we can see that we now have all the bits and pieces that have been added. So the vendor file and all of this. And if I was to just do a, just check something out a minute, so just bear with me a minute. Yep, so there is no, all of these things that I've just installed are ignored, okay, from the GitHub, which is fine, which is what I want, as I mentioned before. Okay, so the next step in the browser is kind of like the final step, which is the Docker Compose, which brings everything together. So let's do that. So let's go back into the terminal, and run this file. I'm just gonna, let's just run it from here because you can see that. So let's run that. And this is now, we don't have any images, so this is going to build those images. And then it's going to pass everything through. Now, what I'm going to do in the browser here is, in this tab, I'm going to just remove that like so. So I create a fresh tab, which means that this is a decent test. So let's go back to the terminal and see what's going on. Okay, so we've done MySQL. That's fine. Now we're dealing with Stretch, downloading that, which is the Debian Stretch, for the web server. And then now we're doing a bunch of installations for things like libapache and PHP. This is kind of the slowest part of this thing. So yeah. Go and grab a coffee. Hopefully this will work. Setting up Perl. It's all good. Blimey, this is now the longest stream I've ever done. 3 hours. 3 hours. I'm surprised my watch hasn't vibrated and told me to stand up at least 5 times already. So, come on. Yeah, so just looking back on the conversation about bashing PHP. Yeah, okay, so I mean, the Slayer Darth has mentioned that it's a loosely typed language, which is true. Although it's getting better in the new versions of PHP, especially with 7.2, where you can actually do some proper good strict typing stuff, which also brings in a lot of performance benefits as well. But yeah, I mean, some people like strictly typed stuff and some people don't. I mean, for example, JavaScript isn't. And look how good that is, in terms of like how far-fetched that's used. I actually use JavaScript a lot when building mobile apps. I use something called Appcelerator, because that can what's the word I'm looking for? Compile the JavaScript down into the native iOS and Android counterparts, or Windows I think it does Windows. I've never done it with Windows because I've never known anyone who wanted it done with Windows. But anyway, why is this taking so long? This is taking a little longer than I had hoped. Let me see. Is my terminal window dead? No, it's just not responding. This is a little bit strange. It should have just worked. This is the classic "it worked on my machine" type thing. I've gone through all of the steps here, and it just hasn't run. I think what I'm going to do is just bring up another terminal just to see, and then just do what is the command? The env of Windows install, just to see what on earth is going on. So just bear with me a minute, folks. So that's not even evaluating to the shell, which is a bit weird. Ooh, SSH command error. Exit code 255, IP address show. I think something's gone bang. I'm going to have to kill this. Hang on, let's close this out. Let's abort that. Clear this down. I'm going to start this again. Let me just kill the container again. Or kill the machine. Yep. And then let's just create it right from the off again. So do bear with me a minute. Something has obviously gone bang. my I can see the lights on my machine going nuts, so it's thinking about something. Yeah, so Slayer Darth mentioned that the natively written apps will always perform better. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff that I do is like form-based apps, and you don't need to have any fancy UI or graphics or anything like that. It is literally form-based stuff. Like signing in, signing out, that kind of stuff, or scanning something in, or just taking a photo and then sending all of that information, depending on the client's requirements, up to an API, which is something else that I write. And so, in my opinion, unless you're really, really focusing on graphics, so if it's a game, for example, I wouldn't even dream of writing a game in say Appcelerator if I needed to use all the toys that the actual native iOS or Android Java can offer me, because you're having to go through another layer. But for things like forms, it's perfectly simple. This is causing some issues now. This is worrying me. It's saying that it can't spin up the that already exists. Let's remove that, and then let's create that. It does. Sometimes it doesn't like it when you keep removing and creating things instantly. But let's try it again and see what happens. There is definitely a problem with the Docker machine. I did get a message this morning that Docker had been updated, or Docker has an update, and it asked me whether I wanted to install it. I said no, because I knew I was going to use it in the stream. But maybe there's a bug that they fixed. Who knows? Who knows? But I really just want to get to the point where I have a web server, or I want to get to the point where the WordPress is actually working as it did about 30 minutes ago. This isn't really a good advert for Docker, is it? When it keeps just dying. But I don't normally just tear down a machine and tear up a machine. It's usually the containers that I remove. I might try and name the machine something different, just to see if that'll do it. But let's see what happens now. This is starting to look good. Okay, so we've evaluated the shell, and if we did Docker images again, we will have nothing. So let's just do an up and bring those up again. Do. So I do apologize. We're having to do all this again. Hopefully it'll work. I mean, if it doesn't work, then you've seen it work before. So that's done. That was, what was that? MySQL. Look at all those layers. That's nuts. So now we're doing Apache. Installing all those things. There's only 9 steps in there, so like 9 layers, which is good. Nice and simple. And it was coming up to the point where it failed. Where it's, I don't know if you can see where it's saying term is not set. That's because I haven't set the interactive mode to be not interactive mode. Now that looks like it has actually done its job. So let's clear that down. Do a docker ps-a, and yes, so they're both up, which means now that if I was to go to the browser and do a 192.168.100 blah blah blah, hopefully, fingers crossed, this will come to light. Maybe. Have I got a different Docker IP? Because this isn't working. Let's have a look. Docker machine IP, and it was WordPress hyphen install. Ah, this is why I have a new IP address. There we go. That's why. That'll be why. That'll be why. There we go. Boom. Okay, so that is perfect. That is exactly where I want to be. So you can now follow the this develop branch. I'll tag this in a minute, and I'll push this down to a master. In fact, let's do that now. Let's compare and pull request. So this is adding files for WordPress install. Create pull request. Scroll down, merge the pull request. Confirm the merge. There we go. So it's now merged into the master branch. Excuse me. So yeah, just follow this series of instructions, and then you've got, I mean, it's just 2 or 3 commands. That, or 4 commands. That, this, and then that, and then you've got WordPress installed. And we've managed to do that in 3 hours and 11 minutes, which means that I won't have to do this ever again when a client comes and asks me for WordPress work. Now there are, like I said, there are a lot of things in here that I need to adjust and play with. So, for example, I don't like the way the passwords are hard coded. I don't like the way we are not supplying any volumes to this. So, which means that any change that I do in here, we will need to rebuild everything all the time. There is a way to get around that by using a Docker volume. I'm not going to show that now because we've really pushed over time, but I will be looking at that later on, probably today, and then pushing that up and then tagging. And once I'm happy with it, I'll tag it to the same version of WordPress, which is in here, which is 4.8.2. And then the plan is to continually update this repository every time WordPress gets an update. That means that you can just download a tag of this or clone a tag of this, and then there you go. And then for the clients, what I can do is just create a fork, or make it private, and work off of that. But this is basically the basis, if you will, for having WordPress installed. But with that, I'm going to shoot off. But thanks ever so much for everyone who has taken part. I do apologize to right at the top here, Jason J.M. Benson. I do apologize. This wasn't a pre-recorded video. If it was a pre-recorded video, then there wouldn't be as many ums, ers, buts, and oh dear, it hasn't gone right. Yeah. But as always, guys, I do a stream like this, or I try and do a stream like this every Saturday around 11 a.m., as well as the How to Code Well channel. This is going to be on the How to Code Well channel on Monday, if I can get time to encode and all of this stuff. And I'm going to be talking about the Docker talk that I'm doing at PHP Southwest on Wednesday. So I'm going to practice that, because I haven't really practiced it yet. So, yeah. But anyway, thanks again, guys. I need to shoot off, grab some lunch, and then work on everything else that I've got going on. But happy coding. Cheers. Bye-bye. Awesome end screen. I need to change that.